Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome back to another edition, a 2025 edition of Noles Anonymous. I'm your host, Drake, and in the stream yard today, I'm joined by the one, Mr. David Wise. Davey, what's going on, man? You got a little tan from your honeymoon.
I did. Yeah, Drake. New year, new me. New year, new Florida State, hopefully. We need a good year this year. I need something happy to talk about. It was almost too miserable last year to even talk about.
Well, I
Just
mean, we took some time. We need to celebrate you. You got married.
I did.
Everything was
You got
happening
married. I
around.
got married. What
Hey,
a
no,
what a
listen, man.
2024.
We need to take a step back, but only do you take a step back to move forward. We took a step back to bring one of our best friends back into the fold. You know him. We love him. It's our boy, Mr. Maximus Moody, aka Mr. William Max Moody. Max, welcome back to the show.
What's up, team?
Yeah.
What's up? I apologize for the iPhone. I've got my recording set up there, but I'm missing one cable. So, part of my job for the past 2 years with the Battle's End was, putting it all on the line for the fans, which included random stuff like taking, random cables down to the Battle's End studio and, forgetting to bring them back and stuff. So, there's that. But I appreciate you guys having me. It's fun to come back to where it all began 4.5 years ago. We started the Noles Anonymous podcast, and now a couple marriages, couple seasons, some good ones, some not so good ones. NIL literally becoming legal, me having to
Right.
leave to go help facilitate that for Florida State, me leaving that to start the agency, and
I was
but
actually
it's the
going to go
same four
right into that
dudes.
right now. New
So
year, new you. So, do you want? Let's talk about it a little bit now that you're no longer with TBE. Do you want to tell the folks now what you're working on at this moment?
yeah. So I spent really 2 years at the Battle's End, Florida State's NIL Collective. Really will forever be proud of the work we did there. I think there was a lot of confusion, a lot of people trying to figure out what the heck is NIL even going to look like. And, the guys who had the idea for the organization and put the money behind it that brought me in really grabbed the bull by the horns and dove in. And I'll forever be grateful to our founders and Ingram and all them for giving me that opportunity. This past year, I got certified as an NFLPA agent. It takes about a year. You got to do a lot of background checks. They got to look at your finances and financial dealings, and then you have to take a test on this fun thing, the NFL collective bargaining agreement, and got
How
certified with
big is
that.
that?
It is
Jesus, that boy's
600
thick.
something pages. Yeah, it's pretty big. So 60 questions and 180 minutes to answer, and they can literally ask you anything that's in there. So it's if you're ever thinking like, oh, how do you become a sports agent? That's step one, and it's a doozy. Um, anyway,
Nice.
so I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I ended up leaving the Battles End this December and starting an agency. So I'm working with two NFL guys now in Fintrell Cypress and Maurice Smith, and also working with several of the Florida State guys in the NIL space, always kind of expanding. Moody Sports Management's the company. And, with revenue sharing, I'm sure y'all have all heard a lot about that coming up in the summer. I realized that, college kids are really professional athletes now. And the time has come that they need professional representation and they need people to help them navigate this, because it's not just, you know, originally, right, they were just, oh, here, do a deal with this car dealership real quick. And then it was, oh, okay, just we're working with the collective. Now it's going to be professional contracts between the school and the player. And there needs to be, some real adults in the room there. So decided to go full in on that. And anyway, that's enough about me. Probably longer answer than you wanted on Sunday morning, Saturday morning, whatever this is. Let's talk football.
All right. Well, Dave, since basically you kind of want to start, out with the old and with the new, why don't you take us back to the old
Mm.
2024, how that happened? Keep it quick, keep it simple, but what you looking forward to for the 2025 year as a whole?
Well,
Well,
first,
Drake.
our NIL collective. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
If you ask the message boards.
Yeah.
So,
Wow. So the list is probably as long as that collective bargaining agreement of things that we could talk about here, but we won't do that because we don't have until 2026 here. Um, it's funny because this year started with, I think, with a lot of people feeling like, oh, well, DJ Uyunglele was the problem. Like, we just needed Jordan Travis. You throw Jordan Travis into this exact setup and we would have been fine. And I think you fast forward to the middle to end of the season. I don't know about anybody else. I'm not going to sit here being like a apologizer for anything, but I don't think DJ Uyunglele was the problem. And in fact, by the end of the season, I wondered what would this team have looked like if he was starting now as the team started to get a little bit of momentum, but it just never came together. Nothing ever clicked. That first offensive drive against Georgia Tech felt like the most cohesive drive the entire season. And it's just so funny how we started the season thinking left right off or picked right back up where we left off last year. And then right after that, the offense couldn't move the ball. The defense started to get beaten up because the offense couldn't do anything. And really, we became a special team school, which I guess was kind of cool. Best kicker, best punter. How about that? But
You'll ever see those like
oof,
videos where like the golfers are just like us videos where Tiger Woods every now and then will just shank one, like the launch monitor, the launch
Mhm.
thing will, obviously seeing this from a very close view, that's really the best explanation I have for it. It's just like everything went wrong,
yep,
but so wrong to the point where it's like, Dave, you say like, yeah, we'd be here till 2026 if we tried to list everything. In a way we would, in a way we wouldn't. Like sometimes probability, like outliers exist in probability for a reason. And sometimes you just get two standard deviations off to the negative for a litany of reasons and things that everything that could go wrong did. And it's not even, I'm not just saying that because of my role and, where I was. It's just I struggle to think if you ran back the same season with the same team 10 times, you would ever even come close to that same result. In
yeah,
fact, I think the lowest you would end up coming is like 5 wins if you played it 9 more times. It just even in the games where it's like, you felt like, okay, these are for sure winning games, random shit would pop up, or sorry, random stuff would
I
happen.
know.
And you're like, of course, this is the game where like, okay, here's an example. SMU. First of all, we didn't know they were a potential playoff team.
Yeah,
Of course, that's the week where freaking hurricane shows up and our guys have to travel a day earlier. And that's one less day they're getting to practice at our facility. That's one less day they're getting rehab in our rehab facilities. One less day there's enough film rooms for all the position groups. So you got guys just sitting in a hotel room waiting to get into their, their position group meetings. They're eating road food instead of home food. Like, not to make a million excuses, but like, of course, that was the week against the future playoff team that we had to travel early, and you have that adversity. Like that couldn't happen against the Cal, and
right.
it just felt like everything kind of just the way certain injuries were timed, right? Clemson was it Clemson where Darius just all of a sudden tweaks something in
Yeah,
warmups and can't go, and you're like, oh, of course, like hardest game of the year, our best offensive lineman also happens to be our left tackle. Just tweaks his whatever it was, his neck or whatever during warmups, and now he's out. It just man, this was such a Murphy's Law year that it's hard to really even look back on it because there's so many things that probably would never go wrong in conjunction with each other again.
I mean, everything I think just went bad to worse. Like, I think Dave, you would ask every single like, how can it get worse from here? Well, I think basically we found out each and every single subsequent week that would happen, and unfortunately, I mean that led to significant turnover on both the roster and also with the staff, depending on who you ask. I mean, Alex Atkins is no longer the offensive coordinator. Now we have Gus Malzahn. That will be a discussion for a different day. We have Tony White over from Nebraska. Terrence Knight is now the new defensive line coach, and you also now have an extensive influx of new portal talent. And then Max, this is what I kind of want to ask you about. When it comes to, I know TB focused a lot on talent retention and somewhat talent acquisition. If I want to be, if you want, you can correct me if you can. What goes into this kind of time period here, where the season ends? You look over the roster, you evaluate the talent. I guess how would you go? How would you? I guess what goes on at this point in time when you're trying to, fix some holes or actually keep some, play, pillars of your team together?
Yeah, good question. So, I mean, our role was very much based in being the bank, right? We ultimately were a fundraising organization whose job was to make sure that we had money. I'm defending myself a little here, but a quick rumor dispel is if Mike Norvell had wanted to spend $20 million on 10 punters, our job would have just been to tell him if he had that much money to spend. This idea that I would ever look at Mike Norvell and say, no, you can't spend that on that player is borderline laughable. I mean, when people really put their, really put some thought into that and picture me and Ingram in a room with Mike Norvell haggling with him about what to pay a player. It's just not realistic. That's not our job. This isn't the NFL where you have independent GMs. So as the collective, our job would be trying to get as much money as we can in the war chest. That way we can get the talent that we need. It is, trying to work with staff. So, fortunately the rules have laxed up a bit where, we could coordinate it with staff. So it'd be working with Derek Ray and his team to figure out, okay, what do you think you're gonna need? Obviously, because like fundraising, like anything in a vacuum doesn't is hard. Like, if we just go to people and say, hey, we need money, they're like, okay, what do you need? So, it's trying to forecast, okay, here's what they're saying they need. Where our role would really get big is, we had the ability to talk to other collectives, to talk to agents, to talk to people who had talked to a lot of different schools and try to figure out what the market looked like for the things the coaching staff needed. That wasn't, I want to be very clear. So that's not us telling the coaching staff what to pay. But if they said, hey, we need 2 defensive ends, well, we had a pretty good idea what high caliber defensive ends were asking for on the market. So our job then was to go, okay, it's going to cost about this, and then go to our contributors and try to make sure that money was there. If the coaches can get them for less, great. If they need to get them for a little more, we'll find the money. But it really was the two parts of intel gathering and fundraising to satisfy the needs of whatever the coaches thought it would be.
It's just it's funny to think about like the money of it, because Florida State is still among like what last year the top 10 spenders I think in college football, or maybe
Eh.
15-ish, somewhere
Some
in
of
that.
that's because we are undertaking two very large projects at the same time right now, which kind of messes with that number. We're building the football only facility, we're building the stadium, so we've spent a lot. Yeah. I sorry to cut you off. I would argue the opposite. I think there is almost this for forgetting this amnesia of like Florida State historically has been a team that punches above their weight financially.
Right.
I mean, we've
Mhm.
never been one of the wealthiest teams. We've never had the most well-funded booster club. We've definitely never had the most boosters as far as a number.
We're a newer
Um,
school. We just don't have
yeah,
any grads and boosters.
Mhm.
exactly. And look, we grew our collective to the largest collective in the country by several metrics, by recurring memberships, by one time, by total people who had given a donation, by money raised from retail members. So if you look at people who give under, I think I set the number under 5,000 a year, we blew all we blew all the other schools out of the water. The challenge was we didn't have whatever it was. We had that $20 million delta in TV money, and we also haven't had the institutional fundraising for 5 decades that other schools have had to fall back on. So we had what we had for the collective, but then we didn't have the cavalry coming of like, oh, and then these guys will take care of the stadium and the indoor facility and all that. It kind of had to be all the same people because again, we're 20 million short on TV revenue to begin with. So,
Mhm.
Well, I think the fascinating thing though is like we still spent a lot of money, right? Like
oh
we
yeah,
knew we were reloading a roster after we lost a lot of guys. The idea that we would drop off in 2024, I think was a foregone conclusion for most people. Like I don't think a lot of people thought this team's going 13-0 again with
Oh,
what we
hold on, Dave.
lost.
No, I'm gonna cut you off there because you thought we were gonna lose one game last season heading
I
into
said
the
I
year.
didn't say 13-0. I did not say 13-0.
You were very you were no, I can play back the tape and put it in
Okay.
here for
You
that.
know what?
Because the only
You know
reason you
these
took
are
that
the
loss, like, we
arguments I
didn't pick one.
miss.
Okay, so
Like, so
all
keep going.
alls I'm gonna say is this. All right, Braden Fisk, Jared Verse, those guys are crushing it in the NFL. What's
Hey, shout out
fascinating?
Bernardo Green too. I mean,
What's
look at all of them.
true exactly, and Jerry, like
Sure. Yeah.
these guys are killing it in the NFL. So we lost a lot of big time talent. You, Kirk Herbstreit. Anyways, the fascinating exercise moving forward, I think, is like expectations and how these rankings matter and how you're evaluating and valuing these players. Because like what's interesting to me is a guy like Pat Payton, right? Like he was among the most effective players on this roster in 2023. 2024 comes along and he's bottom 10 PFF rankings on the team in defense. And you just wonder, like, I don't think he was totally a byproduct of just Jared Verse and Braden Fisk being there. Maybe he was. I don't think he necessarily was. But how does that happen? How do you go from that to that so quickly and with no injuries anyone's aware of? And Marvin Jones Jr. is this 5-star, right? Coming from Georgia, and he comes in. And I know a lot of people didn't expect him to light the world
I
on
would say I wouldn't compare those two because one has significant production and the other
production
one does
versus.
not.
But
So
that's the point.
I wouldn't do
You,
that. That's like an apples and oranges thing.
but
I
that's
think
the
with
point.
Pat, look, man, I think without getting into I don't want to say anything that sounds like it's coded. I'm purely just trying not to say anything out of turn. There's no secret like single thing that happened with Pat. So please don't think I'm implying that when I say I don't want to just, but I just don't want to attack the kid is all I'm saying.
Yeah,
I think Pat's a good guy.
I don't either. Right.
But it happens all the time. As fans, we focus. Think about as fans how much time you spend reading about your team versus other teams. Every team has a Pat Payton. NFL, NHL, MLB. There's always someone that had a great year the year before, and then the next year they just don't match that production. Hell, it happens with quarterbacks in the NFL all the time. Look at Kirk Cousins right now. Oh yeah, we thought he was going to come in because look at what he'd done in Minnesota before the injury, and now they've got the rookie replacing him.
Look
It
at
just
CJ Stroud. I mean, he had a great rookie season last year, and
right.
this year it's been a huge decline.
Yeah.
So, and that's not to excuse it and be like, oh yeah, no, it's no worries, Pat. Like, thanks. Like, it's not your fault. But that is to say, like, it feels like more of an outlier when we focus for the team we spend most of our time focusing on. But there are teams all over the place that have guys who come back, and it's just like, what the hell happened there? Where did that guy go? I mean, dude, Florida State had a long tradition for a while of cornerbacks that would do that. Had this great sophomore, I mean, sure he's a great guy. I don't know him personally. Please don't take this as a shot. It's just on paper. To Horace McFadden, what was he like a freshman All American or a sophomore All American? And that his money year, it was like, hey, is this
I
guy
was going to
still
say,
playing football?
I immediately thought of him when
And
you brought that up.
and again, that's not a shot at him. It's just it happens in the sport of football, and that was before NIL. So it's not
Right.
like he got his eyes on the money or something.
I
Like
mean, it's a natural thing when it happens with that. I mean, you're like, yeah, I agree with you. Where like you have the one season where I mean he was all world class the year of when Jared was like opposite of him.
right.
This past
But
season, it's like a step down. I mean, was he bottom? I don't. I mean, you know how I feel about PF. I don't think he was bottom
right.
10, but it definitely was a drop off that. But like Max is saying, like we watch our team every single day, so it's a lot more, I guess, magnified to see that overall.
Here's the question that I have though. What do you do about that moving forward? And there's a reason I brought up there's a reason I brought up Pat Payton and Marvin Jones Jr. So if you're the staff moving forward, how do you make sure or try to make sure that doesn't happen again? So a guy like Pat Payton, right? When you're talking about player retention, one of the two sides of the coin that the collective works on, right? Like retention and acquisition. On the retention side, you have a guy like Pat Payton coming off an unbelievable season. How do you not throw money at a guy like that to try to keep him there, knowing what he just did? And on the flip side of that coin, Marvin Jones Jr. is a 5-star legacy at Georgia. You presume he's there for a reason. You haven't seen the production yet, but you're going to pay that guy a lot of money because on paper, he should be what Pat Payton was in 2023 also. So how do you
So
navigate that?
there's two things to this. So Pat Payton, if he ends up having, assume Pat Payton has the year he has in 23 and then the year he has in 24, you're going to get that wrong every time. You just are. What? Because like you pay guys for the year that they had, like the answer to that is you pay them based on what they've already done, not on potential, but he'd already done it. So look, there's two things at play when you talk about how much to pay a football player. There's what they're worth as a football player, and then there's the market economics of football itself. What I mean is there's okay, we've evaluated him. Here's how good we think he is. Here's what our budget is, and here's how much we would like to pay him. Then there's the element of, well, Ole Miss is going to pay him triple that, and do you want him on your roster or not?
Yeah.
Now it can't. Where teams get in trouble is only looking at one or the other. Because if you only look at option one, well, here's what we think he's worth, and you just completely, well, if another team's going to pay him that, fine, take him. You're going to lose most of your good players. If you only look at the market economics of it, you're going to overpay for everyone. So it really is up to good front office staffs to find the balance of that. Because, Marvin Jones, like you said, didn't have production. That's a market economics hire or payment. Like you're paying him based on what you think other schools are going to offer him, and you want to have him, badly enough to pay for him. Pat Payton was like kind of the marriage of both. Yeah, he could have gone to other schools and made more money than he did at Florida State, but he also had proven production, and you had internal scouting on him that told you he was worth what you were paying him. Like that's when you really, again, it's just an outlier, but it does get to a larger point of you have to be more diligent in not falling too victim to outside to what other schools will offer kids, because that's when you start to lose money. But you also, again, can't be so trusting of yourself that well, it doesn't matter what anyone else says. We think our scouting report's always right because anyway, it's
Dave, you should
long-winded
know the
way of
answer.
saying nothing.
Dave, you should know the answer to that. You're a Yankees fan. You just saw Juan Soto go
throw
to your
money at it, baby.
crosstown rebel. Just throw money at the problem. Well, now we know Patrick Payton. That goes to probably the next thing I want to talk about. Patrick Payton is now over at LSU, and FSU has brought in not one, not two, but currently 13 different new players through the portal. Actually, let me pull it up right here from our friends over at Noles 247. Give me one moment here. And overall, I kind of want to get your guys' thoughts overall. Max, I kind of start with you here. I think I don't know if you've been.
I want to preface. I had nothing
Yeah.
to do with bringing any of these kids in.
That,
I had left Battles in, so I can speak freely here without anything I say being read into me, whatever. Y'all get what I'm saying here.
No, I get that. I get that.
I'm trying to read this on my phone. I'm sorry.
No
You
worries.
just have to read out loud to me.
Yeah, no worries. I got you, man. But so I kind of want. So then, Dave, I'll go with you. You've seen kind of basically how out with the old and with the new.
Yep.
As best I can say that properly here. With these players now, where do you think the staff has probably punched above their weight class, and where do you think the staff right now still has a little bit of work to do?
That's a relative question because, like, for example, I'm happy we went out and got a guy like Javon Boggs, right? Like at wide receiver at a huge position in need. I'm happy we added. I'm happy we've added some of these other receivers we have, like Deuce Robinson from the transfer portal. That is a massive pickup. I think a lot of people that actually follow recruiting, there's a reason I don't like doing it anymore, just like you, is because a month before signing day, maybe 2 months before, you had 3 elite blue chip wide receivers committed, all 3 of whom ended up decommitting. We had to replace that entire influx of wide receiver talent, right? Am I still happy with what we've done in that room? Absolutely. Do I think it'll be better than it was last year? I don't think it could get any worse, but I like what they've done, adding a guy like Deuce, adding all of this height to the room. Like, we're going to play bully ball on the outside. If nothing else, we're going to run block with our wide receivers. We're going to be a physical football team. If Mike Norvell wants to get back to playing physical, run the ball first football, I think that is only great for what our game plan is in 2025, because what we tried to do last year just didn't work. The only question I have is on the defensive side of the ball. You're still going to need, I think, to add some talent to that defensive line. They're adding depth through the transfer portal right now.
And Daryl Jackson's back, is he not, for next year?
He is, yeah.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely.
That's actually probably one of the biggest things they're bringing
Yeah,
back, actually.
I think, dude, I mean, you got him, you have KJ, and you've got Daniel. So I think between the 3 of them, like, you had a good foundation of returners at 1, 2, and 3 to start with. Like, we obviously didn't expect Daryl to come back, or because he declared for the draft and then
Right.
undeclared. Which, by the way, this is an interesting note.
Test that well too.
Well, here's an interesting note. So it used to be, we have to sign as agents what's called an SRA, Standard Representation Agreement, with a player. And we submit it to the NFLPA, and that says, hey, I'm Fentrell or I'm Mo's agent. I just saw for the first time yesterday that a kid had submitted an SRA with an agent to the NFLPA, which typically like ends your eligibility, and was getting NIL offers. It was like, actually, I'm staying. And the PA was like, that's fine. We'll let you out of it. So that kind of interesting. That now you could have this, I don't know. It's odd, right? Like, I don't know how deep that'll go. I don't know if that was just because he had the junior college situation, but like, I really hope we don't end up with a Bronny James situation where you're getting into freaking March with guys saying they're going to the draft but they're still like entertaining college offers, because that would be just a nightmare. But I like D-line. Let me ask you this: who do you think, who's your favorite transfer portal get? Not as an overall player, but relative, or I guess in the sense of what he adds to the room that was there already, if that makes sense.
Gunnar Hansen, the Vanderbilt offensive lineman. That was the one big get that I wanted to do. He has SEC experience. He's top in his conference at that level, with like at that position of need, and something that we have a new OL coach, and we knew O-line probably. I don't know if it took a step back, but I think maybe it kind of solidified what we thought heading into last year, that the offensive line was struggling in the development department now. And I think someone like a Gunner is going to be similar to Dylan Gibbons from like 2 years ago, 3 years ago. someone new, like a fresh face, like kind of like a gritty person to basically lead those younger players probably into the next season for 2026. So that to me is something that for me it's Gunner hands down.
I think Deuce is probably like an easy answer because we haven't had a. I mean, he is a guy like Kelvin Benjamin. He is a guy like Johnny Wilson. That's just his frame.
Sure.
You can't teach that. You can't create that. So that's great to have. But I'm gonna go somewhere else with this. I'm gonna buy the Kool-Aid boys. Thomas Castellanos, baby. We got a quarterback who can run the ball. Woo! I want 1,000-yard rusher at quarterback. We're not going to win games throwing the ball around all over the place till we have an offensive line that could pass block. Mike Norvell, through the transfer portal, has put together an offensive line that's going to be able to run block awfully well. All their grades are off the charts at run blocking, not so much at pass blocking, which is funny because like Micah Pettis might be the biggest player in the country. But
that's a large even.
He's a big guy. But I think if you're going to try to maximize your ability to win games in 2025, you're going to have to carve out a niche that you are just really good at. And if you're having to worry about the quarterback running the ball too, and you're going to have the defense account for him literally every play with a guy like Castellanos, that's going to add something to the offense that was just missing this year. Some element of surprise, right?
And shout out Marcus Douglas coming home, taking over a basically what do you call it? Over taking a summer abroad, a semester abroad over at Arizona State. I see the full play from him over there. I feel with that. I mean, look, that's a good one too, Dave. I think another. I mean, with Castellanos, I know some people were not kind of, I guess, excited about it for those reasons, but I think you kind of hit the nail on the head where it's this. Offensively, this isn't a team, or Mike is not a kind of a play caller that wants to basically just throw all over the field. Yes, you want to have a strong running game, with deep shots throughout the field. Where Malzahn, typically from my opinion, is he excels particularly with mobile quarterbacks. If it's a pocket passer, you typically see Malzahn kind of struggle a little bit. So to me, I think Thomas Castellanos is another one. Micah Pass being a large human being he is. And I'll also add, Randy Pittman. That was someone that was originally committed to Mike Norvell for some time and then went over to Gus at UCF. So him coming in the fold now, someone that's already acclimated to that system at a tight end spot can help out Landon Thomas. I think that's huge. What about you, Max?
Yeah, I don't really want to answer my own question because then it's like I'm kind of saying one room was like bad or whatever, but I do think complementary to the room they're going into. I'm really excited about Caleb Lavalier in the linebacker room. I think you already had a pretty good, you're able to keep Omar, you have Juice, and you have Blake. So I think adding, one more very athletic linebacker to that room, played a lot of running back in high school, had 9 total tackles in his bowl game. I think that's probably my favorite complementary addition to a room of just like, okay, cool. I see right where he fits in.
Really
Seems
gritty,
like, you can
student of
kind
the
of have
game kind of athlete. Like he's definitely someone you can definitely
real
see.
gym rat,
Real gym rat.
really some would say deceptively fast, I
Thank you.
suppose.
That's right.
No, but yeah, I think as far as like just a good solid add to a room that I already, once you kept all 3 of those guys, felt pretty good about. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, no, I really like that add there.
Well, here's my question to you guys then. Taking into account this class, a lot of guys have transferred out. There's a ton of roster turnover. I think like 30-something guys have been replaced on the roster, which is now up to a cap of 105 players you can have.
So with assuming the house settlement stays intact as is, it'll be 105 scholarship limit cap, whatever you want to call it.
So we're obviously able to add a lot more players than historically. So you really can turn over a roster quicker now, I think, than you ever could before. So my question is, looking at what we've added and what has departed, maybe some addition by subtraction, can you see the vision here of what this staff is trying to do for 2025 and beyond, but specifically, especially for next year?
Yes, probably. I think, guys, not whatever. Don't get mad at me about this. I think my thing with last year was it felt like we went for a lot of best available rather than like a cohesive vision. Again, y'all know I come from a mergers and acquisitions background. I've given this speech 100 times. When you merge 2 companies, you need to set your North Stars first of like, here's what we're trying to achieve with this merger. Here's really anything in life, right? Here's what I'm trying to achieve. And once you do that, the downstream questions kind of answer themselves, right? Because you just go back to like, well, what's my North Star? Okay, how does this satisfy that or does this deviate from that? And I don't know last year. And again, it's not anybody's fault. You had to replace what 13 NFL guys, 11
Mhm.
draft picks, and 13 NFL guys. Like that's a crazy ask and a crazy task in a world where people expect you to be able to like win at the same clip every single year. So I'm not saying they like made a major mistake. I do think this year feels like there's more of a cohesive vision of like this is what we want the team to be, and we're bringing in guys who fit this identity and we know what we're trying to build and where we're headed, rather than just like, feeling like, hey, they're grabbing a lot of great athletes, but we're not really sure where each guy fits relative to the room he's coming into and the other guys you're bringing in at that position.
So basically, we need to look better as a unit for this year, and you kind of feel that the
Yeah,
steps have
yeah,
been
there you
taken
go.
for that on both on the
There you
field and
go.
also with support staff and also with the staff as a whole. So then,
Yeah,
Max, we're about a 30-minute mark. I think it's a good time to wrap it up. Well, how do you want to close
sure.
this out?
I just, one thing I would say to people is don't, as you're looking to next year, don't discredit the fact that you got some pretty good dudes who are getting a year older too. We look at transfers, we look at recruits, but you've got guys who, like a Charles Lester. You got guys like a Quindarius Jones, even a Jabril Rawls, who I guess I named all secondary players there. But Edwin Joseph, like just these dudes who were pretty good last year, who it's like they're getting a year older. You got Cam Davis is going to be a year older. He's going to get a whole off season. You're also bringing in a really talented running back from up here in Georgia as well. But just don't discount the fact against along the offensive line, guys whose names maybe you didn't say a lot last year, but I put a lot of stake in the fact that Andre Otto got thrown in the fire and had to start some games last year and ended up
Mhm.
playing 250 snaps as a redshirt freshman who came from a triple option system out of Key West, Florida. That guy, Andre hadn't played a ton of super high caliber football until he got to Florida State. And I really don't think you can quantify how valuable getting that many game snaps was for him last year. So, I say that as a thing to be excited about is like there is yet another there's a third component of what you bring in. There's also the dudes who are getting a year older.
I'm glad you mentioned Andre because that's actually someone I probably was going to bring up specifically for that. Like someone, baptism by fire is probably the only way you can talk about how he performed, and he performed basically. He's going to get better, and that's the player I'm really excited about. Dave, any
Yeah,
final thoughts?
too many guys, I think, being asked to play before they should have been asked to. And I think to your point, some of the guys that disappointed people last year, some of them are going to overplay or get back to what we thought they might be able to be, but didn't appear to be last year. So we're just going to have just regression or what's the opposite of regression? Ascension to mean.
Regression to the mean works both
Okay.
directions.
Yeah.
So you're going to get regression to the mean where so
Just
much went
positive versus negative.
wrong. Okay. So yeah, I mean, so much went wrong with so many things and seemingly so many players. You're gonna get a couple guys who are just like, where the hell did that come from? But if last year didn't happen, you might not be saying that. So there's a lot to look forward to, and there's gonna be some good stories coming out of this year, I think.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
just look at.
Go
Oh,
ahead,
sorry.
go Max. Go ahead, Max. Go ahead.
Well, so it's not all DB. I mean, shout out again to the linebacker room I mentioned. Like, I would ask everyone to like really close your eyes and picture what you thought of the linebackers after Georgia Tech, and then what you thought of those same linebackers after Florida. Like those dudes got a lot better, and now they have a whole offseason to get even better. Like, where do we think Blake Nicholson and Juice Cryer and Omar are? What level are they going to be playing at in Game 7 next year if they keep improving the way they have?
Yeah, folks, check your tweets about Omar Graham after Georgia Tech, and check your tweets actually after the Florida game about Omar Graham. I think that's the
Yeah,
perfect
I was saying, like
encapsulation of that. I mean, he's correct
those could be
about that.
three damn good. Like by Game 7 next year, we might be saying, "Holy cow, we have four really damn good linebackers here." You know what I mean? Like people do get better. So just
So,
anyway, sorry to
folks,
interrupt you, Trade.
no, you're not interrupting me. So,
Give us
folks,
your closing thought. I didn't mean to steal
no,
your closing thought.
no, my closing thought basically, I think, is all that. Last year happened. Last year sucked. Last year was a poor performance across the board. However, you can pinpoint probably slivers of hope, slivers of places basically of solid building blocks. And then also, to me, I think the staff now understands there needs to be a different direction or a different vision when it comes to actually how to be a Power 5 elite program, blue blood in this new age of college football. And also for some players, I think we said this in one of our first episodes, Mike, this isn't Memphis here. You're at Florida State. There's a different way and different priorities you need to set over here. And I think you finally got that after this past season. So that's kind of my closing thoughts here. And with this team, I'm very excited for who we brought in. I'm very excited the boys are back. And as you know, Max is saying how we're going to have an elite linebacker group. You know what that means, Dave? That means we're going to go 13-0, pack your bags. We're going to Charlotte. We're going to CFP. I am pumped. Now, Dave, I know you haven't done this in a while, but let the folks know what they can do to support us and help the boys out.
Yes, if you liked this video, please do like, subscribe, ding the little bell, turn on notifications. You'll find out when this and our next videos drop. What else? Find us on Twitter, Noles Anonymous. Drake has a Twitter, Max has a Twitter. I do too, allegedly. I don't know what it is.
He's
It's
going
not
to
that
mute
hard.
you anyways if you say one thing he doesn't agree with. So don't follow
Yeah,
him on Twitter.
I will. I will do that. Just watch out.
For Max, that was Dave. This is Drake. And we'll see y'all next time on Noles Anonymous. Take care, everybody.
Thanks for dropping by.
Say it, Max.
It's turbo time.
There it is.